With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the coziest scuba matching set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
His code name's Jackal. He's an exceptional assassin.
Streaming now on Peacock.
He will kill again, unless we stop him.
Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne.
You're paying me to kill him. I am charging you for getting away.
The Jackal's here. Look at the exits.
BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
I will find him, and I will kill him myself.
I like to win.
So do I.
The Day of the Jackal. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
As they flee the Spring Court, Lucien and Feyre find themselves in enemy territory. Though the Autumn Court's beauty rivals Valaris, Feyre and Lucien are threatened at every turn by lack of food, shelter, and safety. When Lucien's brothers track the duo, Feyre and Lucien do all they can to escape, disturbing what little trust the two have developed in their desperation to survive their journey to the Night Court.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of the book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression, will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's most ambitious novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 11 through 12 in A Court of Wings and Ruin.
This week, we ask ourselves, are Lucien and Feyre even friends? Were they ever?
Themes we see in this section include humanity and humility. We start this episode by entering Part 2 of Wings and Ruin, Cursebreaker. Remember, Part 1 was called Princess of Carrion, so fitting for all the destruction that Feyre causes in the Spring Court. Not to be confused with carry-on, the luggage that you take onto an airplane.
I didn't see that note.
I didn't add that note.
Okay, I'm like, I don't see that. I really like that.
It's just every time I say it, Jac is like, carry-on?
Oh. I am the princess of carry-on luggage now that I have new carry-on luggage.
It's true. My first impression of the use of the title Cursebreaker, when I think about it, Feyre was human when she earned the title. To some extent, this is a regression to who she was at the start of Mist and Fury. She is not all-powerful.
In this early section, I'll talk a lot about Feyre struggling with her human side. I would say even more so than she did in Mist and Fury. Controversial!
Controversial.
I don't know if I believe in that yet, but I said it, I'm going to stick with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Convince yourself.
I'm going to convince myself. I'm going to convince you. I'm going to convince hopefully 20% of the listeners.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Part 3 is called High Lady, so we're dealing with titles and masks. In Part 1, it was Feyre embracing this princess of carrion mask, the ruler of destruction. But now we have one of her old names, Cursebreaker. It's an identity that she never really chose to embrace.
We start chapter 11 in a precarious situation as Feyre and Lucien enter the Autumn Court. Quote, "Without my magic, I was blind again. Utterly helpless. That's how I'd been before. How I'd survived so long without it, I didn't want to consider."
I'm going to mention throughout this episode Feyre struggling with her human identity, and we start to see that here. Feyre wonders how she had survived without her powers before, and by not wanting to consider it, we can take it as Feyre not wanting to think about how close to death and how weak she really was, or how much stronger that old self was. Because her old human self did not need powers to survive. You can really look at it both ways, and she can hate herself both ways.
The environment around Feyre is neither welcoming nor does it elicit feelings of safety. Quote, brisk, crisp cold, laced with loam and rotting things. By the way, what a great line.
It is such a good line. Strong, powerful, makes me insecure to write.
Nice.
Woo! SJM wants us to know right off the bat that the Autumn Court is a court of paradoxes, good and bad, not just one thing. Going back to Amy's quote, brisk, crisp, cold lace with loam and rotting things. Loam is a type of soil that plants and produce can grow from, but then you have the description of rotting things. So for me, this is Eris, right? Like he's good and bad. There's potential to grow, but he still comes from rot.
I love that comparison. That's a great comparison.
Oh my God, thank you.
So when we look at this description, though, I think the effect is that we as readers feel unsafe and uneasy, just as maybe Feyre and Lucien feel. Are we, though, convinced that the stakes are high at this point in the novel?
I mean, I am. Should I not be?
I don't know.
You need higher risks. You're like...
I want to feel the way I felt when I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I thought Sirius Black was going to die, and I was like kicking my legs as I was reading because I was so anxious.
You were also a child.
I know, but I don't feel anxious.
That's because you're dead inside now.
Oh
no, I'm sorry. I
explains
am too.
a lot, though.
I am too. This isn't personal. I'm sorry, you're not dead inside.
No, it's okay.
But like we've read a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot to make us anxious. But I think that's a good question. Like, is this high stakes enough? There's a line in here where all of a sudden Feyre's like, 5 days passed. I'm just like, wait, what? Like, we've been at this for 5 days. I will say the time slips too quickly for me here.
I agree. I always forget that they're out there for 5 days.
Longer.
Or longer.
I mean, like but like part of it's just 5 days. Then they're like there for another 3 days and another, like,
yeah,
they're there for a while.
It doesn't feel like it, though.
I think that's the lack of high stakes.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's an SJM writing thing. I don't know. Like, I think I mentioned that before in season 2, where I was like, how much time has passed and not passed? But I do feel like that probably adds to the lack of high stakes, where it kind of feels like maybe a day or 2 has gone by versus like they're starving, they're struggling, they're dirty. I want to know, like, where do they pee? That's what adds my high stakes. Are you telling me that Feyre doesn't want nervous poop? Bullshit. Bullshit. With apples as their main diet? False.
Their body might be going into starvation mode.
Nervous poops are real. The second that they'd be like, all right, here's my dad's house, Feyre. Be careful. We have to be really, really quiet. I'd be like, okay, but where's the nearest restroom?
I could really use an indoor restroom.
I could use an indoor restroom now. Thanks, Lucien.
Note the descriptions of night in this scene. Night was fully overhead, the moon not yet risen. Since Feyre and Rhys's bond has gone dark due to the Faebane, it's no surprise that we see a lack of Rhys, here demonstrated in the lack of the moon, around Feyre and in her environment.
When Feyre, quote, lets Lucien lead the way, which I love the wording that Feyre lets Lucien lead the way, as if her other option was to direct them into the unknown, Feyre thinks, quote, but my magic was still frozen, a crutch I'd become too reliant upon. Having powers is now being viewed as a crutch, something when relied upon too much, Feyre is starting to see as weak potentially.
This is such a reversal for someone who equated themselves to a god a couple chapters ago.
It really is.
She is on this very, very fast pendulum swing constantly.
I am a god. That was a crutch. I'm a different woman now. I feel like now I'm starting to really relate because I pendulum swing all day long.
It's not necessarily a bad thing here, though, right? Because Feyre was such in a place that was not herself when she was at the Spring Court.
Mm-hmm.
And now that she's without her magic, she realizes how far from grace she's fallen and how, I hope, how wrong she was to think of herself as a god.
Yeah. You know, I think it also speaks a little bit to her own ability to survive and adapt and be malleable, because now she's able to quickly humanize herself, quickly become humility. Humble. Wow.
You got there.
I took cough medicine before this, cold medicine. But like, it shows her ability of being able to adapt and being able to... I was trying to compliment her, but then I'm like, but what was she adapting, pretending to be a god? No, fuck that. I'm giving you a compliment, Feyre. It's only halfway there.
Lucien brings Feyre to an abandoned cave. We learn that this is a place he used to stay at when hunting, before he left the Autumn Court for the Spring Court. At first, this may evoke feelings of empathy or similarities between Lucien and Feyre. But let's take a closer look at what we have in this scene. A leather-bound book. Instantly, this image indicates to me civility, something that Feyre lacked when she was a mere human who hunted for her family. 3 bedrolls, indicating that maybe Lucien wasn't alone when he hunted, unlike Feyre, but that he had companions who helped him or were at least with him.
I thought the 3 wasn't interesting, like the 3 bedrolls. It's so random because, like, wasn't this just supposed to be Lucien, right? Or maybe, and his lover, maybe. But then I started thinking, I wonder if it's meant to imitate Feyre and her sisters, the 3 of them. Or maybe it's also supposed to allude to Vasa and Jurian, the 3s. Yeah.
3 amigos.
The 3 amigos.
Despite having provisions with them, Feyre declares that it is too risky to eat the food that she's brought, not knowing if it's laced with Faebane. This comment is a deflection from having to answer Lucien's questions, an attempt to take control of the conversation. However, the loss of the food symbolizes a loss of power, one that has already taken place in terms of their magic, and that will continue to increase with time. And so, Feyre is unsuccessful in deflecting Lucien's conversation, and the male persists with his interrogation. As Lucien says to Feyre, the masks come off in this scene. Feyre allows Lucien to see her coldness, something she's worked hard to keep hidden since Hybern. Gone is all the camaraderie she and Lucien had begun to build.
The masks are off, the insults are in. Feyre accuses Lucien of being Tamlin's faithful dog, which I feel to be a little harsh, especially since, Lucien has been particularly pushing back recently.
But as we saw maybe last episode and the episode before, Feyre refuses to acknowledge truth when Tamlin's around. And I think she is conscious of, but chooses to remain ignorant to the efforts that Lucien made.
It's like she has Tamlin blinders, where someone could walk in, he walks into the room and someone's like, wow, the sky is really blue. And she's like, fuck you up. No, it is not.
Yeah,
Tamlin steps outside. Oh my God, it's such a blue sky.
It's pretty much true. Yeah. Just as much as Feyre has removed her mask, Lucien removes his. We see his possessiveness over Elaine come out in full force. Not only does Lucien admit to not telling Tamlin he suspected Feyre to be a mole out of pity, but also because he was confident Feyre would ensure Lucien could never see Elaine if he sold her out. Now I'm trying to be sympathetic to Lucien. He has no family and just lost his best friend. He doesn't know if he can trust Feyre, who just destroyed the Spring Court. But his possessiveness of Elaine, a woman he met once under duress, isn't a great look for him.
I'm also having a hard time of Lucien not wanting to tell Tamlin about his theory of Feyre because he pities him. I get that Lucien might not be able to tell Tamlin, like, hey bro, BT dubs, I think Feyre is a dirty little liar, but Lucien straight up lets Tamlin think what he wants to think, which is another moment of people not telling Tamlin shit.
And it just feels like how Tamlin treated Feyre in Thorns and Roses all over again, except now it's Lucien to Tamlin.
I'm really trying to grasp the fact of how big this is. Lucien knew that Feyre, who is probably a spy, is entering their court. But he's claiming that he didn't want to hurt his friend's feelings. That's a spy. You're not even a good emissary.
Right.
You're supposed to protect the people. No one here should be in political power at all. All right, I'm coming in. I'm taking over the Spring Court. First thing to go, spring.
Do you hear this cold?
I know.
Can't deal with allergies.
Do you think that I could survive allergy season? I can't even survive this cold. I mean, Amy, it's kind of like what you were saying. In book 1 and 2, it's how Tamlin treated Feyre. And we joked a lot then of this book would be totally different if everyone just told Feyre stuff, right? Just tell Feyre things. It's amazing how things have turned and how much Tamlin and Feyre are similar in this book.
Yeah. And yet, Feyre can give Tamlin none of the empathy.
Yeah. Tamlin and Rhys were the similar ones in book 2. Now in this one, I'm starting to really appreciate like how similar Tamlin and Feyre are, a lot of which is Feyre's making.
Right. And if it's not like them personality-wise, it's certainly circumstantial, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Their situations are very similar, and yet Feyre can't look past the past and Tamlin's choices based on misinformation.
Wow. I'm like, good plot in my mind.
Good job, SJM.
I'm just, in my mind, I was seriously like, it's a good story. I should read it. Like, duh.
It's here that Feyre reminds us of her true intentions. If I'd believed for one moment that my sisters were in danger, no High Lord or King would have kept me from going to save them. But we've discussed that Feyre's destructive behavior is indulgent and not necessary for the sake of her sister's safety, and I stand by that.
Feyre telling Lucien, hey man, if my sisters were actually taken, don't you think I'd do something about it? I think it's a fair point that Feyre made to Lucien. Feyre has the opportunity to be indulgent at the Spring Court and to act out on her whims because her sisters are safe, her friends are recovering, and she can act out a little bit. Lucien and Tamlin should have caught this red flag of Feyre not fighting to get her sisters back. And that's on men being dumb.
Honestly, yes. Just such lack of observation.
I mean, it's really like Lucien's like, or not even Lucien. You know what? Fuck this. Both Lucien and Tamlin. You have Tamlin who's thinking, ooh, my lady's back. Maybe we could sleep together. And Lucien's like, oh no, my lady's been taken. Maybe I get to sleep together. I'm not saying they're only thinking about sex, but at the same time, they're just not thinking about logic.
Right. And who is this Feyre we see right now? And she's not the Feyre we know.
Yeah, they're not even thinking about that at all.
Nope.
Dumb boys.
Feyre admits to contemplating disemboweling Tamlin, but ultimately chooses to let him suffer the collapse of his court. Can we stop and remember Feyre of Thorns and Roses, who nearly died of guilt from stabbing 2 fairies under the mountain? Her journey in Mist and Fury makes this progression completely believable, and this is another reminder that Feyre's love is demonstrated through violence. In this instance, it's possibly love for her sisters more than it is for Rhys.
I love my family so much that I will take this man's bowels, remove him from his stomach, and tie a nice little ribbon with it.
Use him as a bow tie around his neck.
Like, the commitment of saying, like, hey, I love you so much, I'm going to deal with his bowels that are full of poop. I feel like for you, Amy, I'm willing to avenge a pancreas.
Okay.
Like,
I'll take a pancreas.
Yeah. I don't want to deal with bowels. That's gross.
That is gross.
An appendix. Like, I don't want to kill him, you know? I want him to survive. You didn't say what body part you'd avenge me for. I'm just saying, I want to know. I think all the listeners were waiting for that.
I'm sorry. I would take somebody's lungs for you.
Both or just one? Because you can still survive with, oh my God, thank you.
I believe in death.
All right, you know what? I'll do that. I'll go for it too. I'm going, yeah. I agree. I'll take arteries. I didn't want to copy you. After Lucien asks Feyre if she would have disemboweled Tamlin, and she says that she debated it, but thought that this method was a better punishment, quote, certainly longer than an easy death. I slung off Tamlin's bandoliers of knives, leather scraping against the rough stone floor. This is giving me Feyre removing Tamlin from her person. This is giving me Feyre stabbing his stone heart like she did in Thorns and Roses. At this point, the vibes are strong.
I love that you pointed this out because I didn't pick up on it when I was doing my reread. The visual imagery here is just so disrespectful to Tamlin.
Mm-hmm.
That you're taking something that symbolizes him and basically ruining it by scraping it across the stone floor. It's
the lack of care. The lack of care.
It is chef's kiss. It is subtle. It is very good.
Where's that chef?
Let me kiss him.
Let's kiss him.
Could be a her. Let me kiss her. The next morning, Feyre wakes with her, quote, exhaustion, a blanket over her senses. Think about this image. A blanket could be for warmth, or it could be like a security blanket. But Feyre is neither warm nor secure here. First off, I think this is a great image, but I also think that this is speaking to Feyre's expectations and disorientation. The idea of security, this blanket, to me indicates that Feyre expects Rhys to find her. She expects her family to show up and find her first. But the reality is that Feyre has to figure it out herself. She's always had to do the work, and that is why she pushes forward.
Feyre dumps the food from their pack since it's likely contaminated. Quote, "Let the scavengers have it." Because food is power and here the food is poison, I'm going to suggest that the food is now additionally poisoned by her own lack of moral compass. I know we talked a lot about it in the last episode, but here Feyre is saying that the scavengers can eat the food. Let them suffer. In my mind, I'm just imagining like a little bunny comes hopping along and it's just like, I'm just trying to support my hungry bunny babies. Oh, look, all this food. And then it's like, look, children, I've saved us. I brought us apples. And then they all die because of Feyre.
Yes, if Faebane kills bunnies, yes.
It's an allergic reaction that every Fae knows about.
I wondered why it was important to Sarah J. Maas to have the conversation about the route take place between Feyre and Lucien. It wasn't necessary to have this conversation on the page, so what does it achieve by having a place? We learn how Lucien and Feyre are at their core in this conversation. Lucien is an avoidant type, someone who takes less risks. Feyre, on the other hand, steamrolls ahead and hopes for the best. That's kind of funny to me.
Yeah. Like, just powers through.
Why not?
Yeah. I also have an answer to what you sort of asked, but that's not an answer at all that you didn't even ask me, but I'm here. SJM opens up the scene with Feyre comparing the Autumn Court to a jewel box, and even her descriptions of the area are like jewels. She calls the stream jade. We remember what Feyre used to think about jewelry, right? She hated them, but ended up respecting them. I think this conversation has to happen while her instincts are all mixed up. There's a dislike, but also a growing respect that's happening.
Between Lucien and Feyre?
Yeah, Lucien and Feyre and the Autumn Court. It's like she begrudgingly liked Jules, just like she's begrudgingly liking Lucien.
Yeah.
Or understanding him, or like, not just understanding him, but maybe being like, oh, I might have to explain some things.
So let me take a moment
to sit right there and let me tell you how I became the Prince of Bel-Air.
No, that's not where I was going.
Okay.
So this has to be where Lucien thirst comes from, because the next section is the moment when Lucien catches fish with his bare hands. And oh, lordy.
He can catch this right here with his bare hands. I mean, come on, let me read the quote for all the thirsties out there. Me, I am the thirsty. Quote, "I was in the process of constructing a rudimentary fishing pole when he waded into the stream, boots off and pants rolled to his knees, and caught one with his bare hands. He tied up his hair, a few strands of it falling into place as he swooped down again and threw a second trout onto the sandy banks where I'd been trying to find a substitute for fishing twine." I'm also going to say I think it's probably fair that he was shirtless, although Feyre didn't say that there.
Oh, I totally imagined him shirtless.
He's asked to be shirtless.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, he's not, just like his bare hands.
With his sculpted muscles flexing.
Oh, hair up? All right, I get it. I'm on board.
But let's talk about this from a food is power perspective. Feyre is starving. She doesn't have her powers, and she's physically weak from a lack of food. She can't even put together a makeshift fishing pole to catch food. Without Lucien in this situation, she may have starved. Lucien is more resourceful than we've given him credit before. He catches fish with his bare hands to feed the both of them. In this moment, to us as readers and to Feyre, Lucien becomes useful. He isn't just dead weight. I think this is important because Feyre could later choose to leave Lucien behind. She can abandon him at any moment. Ianthe is no longer here to threaten Lucien so that Feyre feels obligated to let him tag along. But Lucien's usefulness is going to become important to Feyre, and the seeds of that are sown here.
Now, I want to look at this through a different lens. I'm going to say that this is a clear moment for the female gaze to shine through. Feyre is out there getting ready to use a fishing pole, and that's not a weapon, but it could be considered one in this moment since it's being used to hunt fish, while Lucien is out there using his hands, and not even in an aggressive way. He's just gently picking them up. Then he tells Feyre that he'll clean them while she starts the fire. This is him being a provider and an equal, while also not being so like, I'm the man about it. Plus, Feyre used to hunt. I'm sure she respects the hell out of this. If she saw this side of Lucien in book 1, rather than seeing the Fae who only liked to dress well and only cared about looks, then I'm pretty sure she would have been into him.
Yeah, up until Tamlin killed the Naga for Feyre.
Yeah, but that was the first survival thing, and that's what got her all tingly. But if you remember, like, her first interpretation of Lucien was, like, vain.
Yeah.
And dressed in pretty clothing.
Yeah. Gave her a bejeweled hunting knife.
Yeah. And then now suddenly here he is, like...
Let me catch you some fish.
And it's just the, like, act of, like, catching them gently. You know, like, it's... Yeah. He's not, like, going in there being like, I am man.
I spearfish.
I spearfish. It's like, no, you don't need to spearfish. They just come to you. 5 days pass, like we were saying earlier, and they are still trekking along. But what stood out to me here is the description of the Autumn Court home. That it was massive and took an entire half morning to walk from one end to the other. And then I think about the Summer Court and the Dawn Court and the Night Court. These are courts where we've seen their homes and they're all massive or at least like really big and impressive. And I think of the Spring Court and how it's always been described as a manor. I wonder if this is proof that Tamlin and the Spring Court itself has always been the weaker of the courts, or does it mean that there's another home that we've just never seen or heard about?
That's an interesting take on it, because if the latter is true, it shows that Tamlin continues to reject his High Lord status and responsibilities if he's choosing to not live in the main residence.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
I think there's also a case to be made about, like, them being a poorer court.
Yeah.
Because Tamlin was struggling to get things in order post-Amarantha.
Right.
And Rhys didn't have that issue, so it's like maybe they're a court that's just been struggling more. But the Dawn Court's like in the sky. The Summer Court is big and pretty. You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
No, it's a good point. I also wonder to what extent Tamlin's father's relationship with Hybern negatively impacted the Spring Court once Hybern was defeated the first time.
Oh, probably, yeah.
And like if appropriations were taken from the Spring Court and given to others.
Well, they also were... Ooh, that's an interesting thought. I do know, like, the slaves were all taken away, too.
Right. So I wonder to what extent the Spring Court did have more. And then 500 years ago, it was taken away from them.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Politics we don't understand.
No, but here we are, filling it in.
Blindly.
SGM, if you're listening to this, feel free to take it.
In addition to fish, Lucien and Feyre come across an apple tree and they feast on apples. I find it odd that Feyre is still even willing to eat apples. Even Feyre acknowledges, quote, I could have sworn off apples forever, but hunger had always blurred lines for me. Sarah J. Maas aptly reminds us in this small moment of Feyre's past, where she's come from and how she was once a starving girl. This whole journey through the Autumn Court is almost a reminder to Feyre and to the reader who Feyre was as a human, since it's been so long since we encountered that girl. I do wonder to what extent Feyre is fully aware of her own regression here.
I'd say aware.
Okay.
I'm going to say aware just because of like how much she's thinking about being human. This is another moment when we see how Feyre is struggling with her former human self. If we also remember, she describes sex with Isaac Hale as hunger, a thing she had to do. The object of her desire is able to change depending on her hunger level, which is great, and that's what you need to do in order to survive.
In some ways, she always has been, always will be just a survivor.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in this scene.
Like, yeah, like, you know, with the whole thing, it's like, well, I'm hungry, but apples it's going to be. Like, beggars can't be choosers.
Right.
I'm horny. Isaac Hale, come on over.
Come on over, baby. Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, you know, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. In addition to Lucien being able to catch fish with his hands, we learn more about the fox's background before he was taken in by the Spring Court. When he describes his lifestyle in his father's court, Lucien tells Feyre that by virtue of being the youngest, he was able to study and train as much as he wanted. Feyre responds, quote, "I'd say that sounds more High Lord-like than the life of an idle, unwanted son." I would say Lucien's actions sound more High Lord-like to Feyre than anything Tamlin ever did, despite him also being the youngest. You want to know who was also the youngest? Feyre, and she didn't get to study as much as she wanted. She was illiterate.
Yeah.
It is weird to me that Lucien, Tamlin, and Feyre were all the youngest. And their approaches to life are all so different. I will say there is something very noble about Lucien in this scene. In response to being asked if he would want to be High Lord, Lucien says, quote, "The bloodshed that would be required to earn that crown wouldn't be worth it. Neither would its festering court."
Lucien can say that about the Spring Court, which might be part of why he never returns. Also, when Lucien is talking about the people turning on him because of what happened to his former lover, how messed up is that? Personally, I always found that to be a little harsh that everyone just blamed him and turned their back on him. Like, have some compassion, people. She was murdered in front of Lucien.
I wonder to what extent the people of the Autumn Court thought Lucien should have known better and that he was being selfish by courting a lesser fae.
That's fair. But, like, she was murdered in front of him.
Have some compassion.
I know. I mean, they don't have to, like, be friends with him, but you don't have to report him.
Right.
I mean, that's how, like, Eris and all them found him, right? We don't really know how they found him.
Yeah. I don't remember.
No, I don't think they say.
I don't think they say either.
I'm going to assume that they were reported, unless they were, like, out hunting. It's just too coincidental. But we're not here to look into that. I believe you, Sarah. I believe it happened. I'm just wondering how.
Yeah. When I look at Chapter 11 as a whole, I see Feyre and Lucien developing new levels of respect for one another, despite their difference of opinions on how Feyre handled things at the Spring Court. Feyre learns to see Lucien in a new light. He has survival skills that not even she has, and he has certain sensibilities regarding being a High Lord that seem better suited to a High Lord than some others Feyre is acquainted with, aka Tamlin. On the flip side, Lucien gets to see Feyre as physically stronger than he ever gave her credit. As the two hike toward the Winter Court border, Lucien comments on how Feyre isn't winded while he is. When Feyre says that she trained, Lucien responds, quote, "I gathered that much after you took on Dagden and walked away from it. That was all you. You had my back with them, with Ianthe. Thank you."
I've never related less to something. Like, that's why I refuse to go on a hike with the guy that I'm seeing until, like, we're well into our relationship. And you can't break up with me because I'm breathing too hard. Are you thinking about all the times that you and I and my ex went hiking?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, do you notice that, like, I waited over a year before we went hiking so I can reveal my true self, which is bitching and struggling.
What we're seeing in this scene is that the anger of the betrayal is gone. And when that is wiped away, Lucien sees Feyre for her actions toward him. Feyre saved Lucien and had the strength to do so. Feyre's reaction is an interesting one. Quote, "The words hit something low in my gut, and I was glad for the wind that kept roaring around us, if only to hide the burning in my eyes." Now, why is Feyre emotional at Lucien's thanks? Is it guilt? Or is this what she's always wanted from him?
I'm on this human train here, but I'm going to say that this is a lovely hiking trip they're both doing. It's the most human Feyre has been since actually being human. She has gone back to her old instincts, and now Feyre's learned that these old instincts and old self works well with Lucien and is keeping them both alive. So now Lucien is thanking Feyre for saving him. That's what makes her emotional. And he's not thanking Feyre Cursebreaker or the High Lady. He's thanking the most core side of her, the human side.
I wonder if that takes Feyre back to when she saved Lucien under the mountain and like that terror and true companionship. You know, that true connection that she had with him.
You know what? I'm going to say it does bring her back, but I'm going to even kind of spin it a little bit where in that moment, Feyre didn't save Lucien. Rhys did.
Fair.
And because she was weak, right? Like, in her mind, like, she was illiterate, and that was a very human side of her. Like, as a human, she was illiterate and didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to read any of it. But now here, for the first time, she actually is helping Lucien with these old human instincts.
Yeah. I just got goosebumps. That was good. I agree.
Yeah.
She now is like, despite being like a human again, I really did help you this time.
Yeah.
And that speaks to her growth.
Yep. The human Feyre that wasn't able to actually do it, I can be that person now.
We know that there's been a shift in Feyre and Lucien's relationship because Feyre is able to sleep while Lucien keeps watch that evening. The chapter started with neither being able to sleep because neither trusted the other. We see Lucien's brotherly concern manifest as Feyre's sleeping mind enters his. He drapes her in a cloak to keep her warm, the blanket she did not have at the start of the chapter. Feyre also appears human to Lucien. This is a reminder to us as readers that Feyre has fully regressed into the girl whose every day was a fight for survival. She is not High Lady of the Night Court, not right now.
I want to look at this quote. I had never known how young, how human I looked when I slept. But when you're sleeping, you're vulnerable. Like, in general, you're weak. Like, you can't help that. That's what Feyre is seeing. Feyre doesn't suddenly look human. It's not like her ears disappear and this human side appears. It's the fact that she looks her age, which is young, and the fact that she looks vulnerable.
I agree. What occurs to me now is that this regression is so important for Lucien and Feyre's relationship. He's not threatened by her here. This is how he's able to trust her again. Lucien sees Feyre for who she is in this moment and remembers the girl who died under the mountain to save him, Tamlin and the Spring Court. That is why he has softened so quickly as they've journeyed through the Autumn Court. And I think that's why he will stay with her, not just because she's the only family he has, but because he remembers the girl he admired so much toward the end and sees that girl still exist inside Feyre.
Yeah, no, you did great. Did great, sweetie.
Thanks.
I approve.
Thanks, Mom.
Thoroughly. Everyone agrees.
Okay.
It was just like when you just said it so well. I was like, yeah, I got nothing for
going.
you.
Chapter 12 starts strong with more sex and death illusions. Feyre awakens to find that she and Lucien have been cornered by Lucien's older brothers. The brothers joke that Feyre and Lucien have run off together, quote, cuckolding Tamlin, and that Lucien has had sex with Feyre.
I love the use of cuckolding and that it's not just a generic search on.
Oh my gosh.
All I have to say, though, is that I think the brothers are a little funny. He says, quote, I didn't think you had it in you, little brother. He had it in her, it seems. Like, comedy gold.
It's totally something you would say.
Yeah, I would. Maybe that's why I can hang with the Autumn Court. I'm just like, those are my people. It's cool. The allergies are good. Apples. Taylor Swift Red album.
I was going to say.
I was getting there.
Feyre realizes that the male holding a knife to her throat is Eris, quote, Mor's former betrothed, the male who had abandoned her when he found her brutalized body. Once again, in the wake of references to sex, and at the thought of the trauma invoked on Mor due to her choice to have sex and free herself of her betrothal, Feyre becomes violent. Her violent nature rears its ugly head. Quote, I could have sworn phantom talons bit into my palms. A day or two more, and I might have been able to slash him across his throat.
And to go even more than that, sex and the anger that Feyre has for it, what they did to Mor and what they're implying here, these are all things to get Feyre's fire going and to start to feel some power. There's a reason why sex is what sparks that particular magic. I mean, even think about what Branna said about the Autumn Court people, that there's fire in their veins, and she was talking about it in the sexual nature. When we see Feyre wield fire as a weapon, it's usually tied to sex. And the next time we see it in the High Lord's meetings, sex will be used there to provoke her as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Feyre even uses fire on Branna after Ianthe tried to assault Lucien, which is interesting.
Yep, and they're the incest twins, and there's a sexual nature to all of it. Yeah, it's just there's a reason why it wasn't water.
I agree. As Jac alluded, Feyre's magic begins to stir awake, and just in time to save her and Lucien from being taken to Baron, the High Lord of the Autumn Court. The way it's described, Feyre's magic comes across as a bear slumbering within her. quote, stirring awake as if some stick had poked it. I just wanted to highlight that as a nugget to save for later when we discuss the beast within Feyre in future episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Despite her show of power here, Feyre's powers have not fully returned, and we are reminded of that as Eris emerges amongst the wall of fire, quote, glowing like a new forged god of wrath. There's something demonic about Eris here. At the start of the chapter, Feyre observed Eris speaking, quote, with a snake's smile. Eris's fire, quote, burst through the small cracks of the cave-in like 1,000 flaming serpents' tongues. This is achieving two things for me. First, it is reminding us as readers how weak Feyre and Lucien are right now in the face of an otherworldly being whose powers could overwhelm them. Second, it is setting up Feyre and us as readers to be biased against Eris and to mistrust him as we re-encounter him throughout Wings and Ruin.
It's also giving me some biblical imagery. We just had a lot of Eve and the Garden of Eden imagery in the previous episode, and this week we're seeing some more apples that they're eating, and now we're getting this demonic imagery of Eris's fire bursting like flaming serpent tongues. Additional side notes, a serpent tongue can also have a meaning of someone who is smooth talking, probably good at lying. I think this has a little foreshadowing with Eris. We don't know his agenda later on, and when he comes in, we aren't sure if he can be trusted or not. Although I have to say, I am personally a fan of Eris. I have no reason to go off of this.
He comes across as a truly gray moral character.
Yeah.
He has a red-headed Draco Malfoy vibe to me.
Yeah, he's like a shadier Reese.
Yeah.
And I'm into that.
I am too.
How quickly I've left Tamlin for this.
Now, if you didn't believe Feyre and Lucien were still weak, quote, our packs, our weapons, our food, all inside that cave. They've left them behind. The weapons and food, images of power are gone. Feyre and Lucien are shit out of luck.
Feyre is finally able to make a distinction of her current self and her human self. Quote, had I remained human, I would have been dead. I'm taking this moment of her own reflection to mean that Feyre had to lose literally everything to realize that maybe she's still stronger than her old human self. It's the moment where she's giving herself some credit. Although it's not without its own expense because Feyre is doing this at her own all-time low.
Although Feyre can finally see that she is stronger than her human self even without her magic, her experience as a human serves her here as they escape into the cold night. Quote, I'd spent enough human winters in the forest to know the dangers of exposure, the threat of cold and wet. To what extent is Feyre's regression to her human state a humbling experience? I wonder if instead that being taken back to her roots helps serve her later on in this novel.
Yeah, I'd say so. Feyre never deals with her human side in Mist and Fury. Mm-hmm. I mean, first she's just trying to survive and just, find the will to live. And she never really goes too much into that. So I think that there's going to be a lot of human references throughout this book.
Yeah.
Because that's the last chapter she also hasn't come to mourn. As Feyre and Lucien are continuing to argue, Feyre thinks, quote, I only continued on. Arguing just wasted energy and time. And I didn't have an answer anyway. I wonder if we'd make it through the night. So this is the first time we're getting old Feyre. The one who didn't have it in her to fight, but also knew at least that it was better to wait. The one who wasn't optimistic, but rather practical. The one who understood her own mortality. Eventually, Feyre is going to be humbled way more for her actions in the Spring Court, but to me, this is when the humility starts to come in. Feyre had to be humble to let her human side shine. She had to be humble to know she needs help. And to be humble to know that Feyre is not powerful enough to win against Eris and company.
And I think that's a necessary journey after her arrogance at the Spring Court.
I mean, it makes sense, though, where it's she just went from all-time arrogant to immediate humbling.
Yeah, which is how a child learns. Actually, it's how all humans learn.
Yeah. We can see this humility bringing back an old identity problem. When talking about Elaine and Grayson, who she's engaged to, quote, the Lord hates fairies, has dedicated his life and wealth to hunting them. Us. We want Feyre to find peace in her own identity, but who she was at the Spring Court was far from who she really is. That this internal turmoil coming back is a good sign. I was debating putting this in the breadcrumb section, but the thing is, we don't know if this is actually a breadcrumb. This is pure speculation. So I'm going to say that I think that this is SJM setting us up for some foreshadowing. Lucien and Feyre start to talk about Elaine, and there are two key moments there. Quote, Elaine loves this lord's son. Not quite a question. That was Lucien speaking, by the way. Lucien says it so clearly. Elaine loves this lord's son. And SJM just spent a good chunk of time the chapter before reminding us that Lucien is a lord's son himself. I think this is the kind of thing that SJM would clearly have said out loud, plain as day, so that later on we can go back and be like, yes, Elaine is in fact in love with a lord's son. Like him, he is the lord. Son. I mean, he has long hair too, so.
Yeah.
We made some points back in season 1 about Elaine and Feyre being compared to one another and having similar storylines. We will see this here again. Elaine is engaged to someone else. She's essentially died. Her human life has died. And she's recovering from that and has a mate who is not her fiancé. It's not exact to what Feyre and Rhys went through, but it's very similar. I think we'll start to see more and more comparisons of Lucien to Rhys. The fact that Lucien spent time learning and tries to think his way out of things rather than fighting his way out of things, it's very Rhys-like. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, and this isn't about one true pairing, but more of the fact that I studied literature for 6, almost 7 fucking years and have a master's degree, and I didn't go into a shit ton of debt so that I can't find moments in books and be like, maybe this is foreshadowing.
I give you permission.
I don't care who Elaine and Asriel end up with. I just want to be right.
I just want to see the signs before I know the truth.
Right? Like, it's so easy to go back and look at foreshadowing once you know what's been shadowed.
Right.
Damn it. I want to do the 4 part.
I was going to make a dirty joke.
Skin?
Foreplay.
Play.
Hey.
I was told that we've become increasingly more crude as the seasons go on. And so far, I will say season 3 is a doozy.
It's a little raunchy. As we close this chapter, Feyre and Lucien camp out in a cave, trying to stay alive despite the cold. They argue about Elaine and about Rhys, the tenuous truce they seem to have developed gone in the wake of their encounter with Lucien's brothers. And that is when Lucien claims that Feyre left us. Quote, us, not Tamlin, us. I wonder if this is hard for Lucien to admit. The male who didn't care for Feyre at the start of Thorns and Roses was deeply affected by Feyre's disappearance in Mist and Fury, and now somehow has entrusted his life to her in Wings and Ruin.
I don't know if I've bought it that Lucien feels hurt that she left him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that from an SJM point of view. I'm saying that from I don't understand him point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about our interview with Gabriel, and I feel like he'd have a much more compassionate understanding of Lucien. And I can lean into that side of being like, yeah, you know, he doesn't know how to show emotions. He's always probably cared for Feyre. But it's so hard for me not to look at this and think ego.
That's fair. Well, let's think about his family life. He's never been shown love within his family except from his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if just simple kindness, like Tamlin taking Lucien into the Spring Court and Feyre not beating up on Lucien the way his brothers did, equates to I'm capable of loving you because you're not an asshole.
Yeah,
like,
that's fair. I'm almost like, wait, does Feyre represent his mother now?
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
I've started like comparing like, what if Feyre and Tamlin reminded him of his parents?
Oh.
Are you? Now I'm starting to think of it.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Oh, shit. I think you did it.
Feyre starts to like, you know, shows him some kindness more than like Tamlin did. Tamlin just uses him.
And yells at him and yeah. Oh my God.
Lucien has mommy issues with Feyre.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like if you think about it, Lucien's only had kindness from 3 women in his life. His mom, his dead lover, and Feyre. And Feyre's almost like a combination of the two, where she's not his lover, but she's weak and, you know, doesn't come from a great social standing. And then she's also with Daddy, aka Tamlin.
Who beats up on her. Well, that was a shocking revelation.
I know. I wonder if everyone's like, oh, what? What? Feyre represents his mom? Does that make Elaine his sister? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, his aunt, I guess.
Weird.
But, like, yeah. I mean, it makes sense why he'd leave with her and why he'd feel like you left us.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, on to some breadcrumbs, because we're all jarred from this. In chapter 11, quote, "His woods by blood and law. He was a son of this forest, and here he looked crafted from it, for it, even that golden eye." Maybe some Lucien High Lord foreshadowing / looking into his parentage.
Maybe.
Yeah.
In chapter 12, as Feyre and Lucien travel towards the Winter Court, she thinks, quote, "After Amarantha had butchered so many of them, including dozens of Winter Court children, I'd never had the nerve to ask Rhys who the children had belonged to, what the consequences had been, if it was considered the worst of Amarantha's crimes, or just one of countless others. Well, this is foreshadowing that this is not only one of Rhys's worst crimes in Khaleesi's view, but will also be a problem.
Yeah, that might come back up.
Yeah, that why is that there, if not to create conflict later?
I know, right? Like, SJM did it in such a smooth way, but the oh wow, here's a thing that totally happened in book 1 that we probably all forgot about, but I'm going to conveniently bring it back up here because in a few chapters, it will be a point of contention.
Yep.
And it's just done so well.
It is done so well.
So, Amy.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Are Lucien and Feyre even friends, or were they ever?
I think we answered that when we were like, oh, shit. I think, it's funny. If I think back to Mist and Fury, Feyre tried to make Lucien her friend because she had no friends.
Mm-hmm.
And here, Lucien is trying to be Feyre's friend, but because he's transposing his mommy issues onto her.
I just had a thought.
Go ahead.
If Feyre is like Lucien's mom, Lucien had an opportunity to save Feyre the way he never could save his mom from his dad's abuse.
Maybe that's why he never turned her in to Tamlin.
Yeah.
Because ultimately his trust is always going to lie with his mother rather than his father.
Completely. And that's why, it hurt when Feyre left, because it's almost as if he couldn't save her and she had to save herself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it hurt so much for him to realize he was part of the problem.
Yep. Just like he might blame himself for his mom being abused.
Right.
Shit.
I didn't think we were going to have anything deep this episode.
No.
Wow.
Oh my God. I know. I was like, this could be such a short, chill episode. Nothing interesting is going to happen. Not that it's not interesting, but
wow.
Whoa. It also answers why they've never really been friends, though.
Right. Because there's always been this odd parental dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, sorry, I'm going into so much stuff. Now there's that weird fake romantic stuff at the beginning. It's kind of like Oedipus complex.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah. But I can kind of see a little bit of Oedipus complex in Lucien too.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it also makes sense why he never made any moves. Flirtatious sexual moves.
Yeah, people
Feyre.
always wondered. We've had so many listeners say that they thought Feyre and Lucien were going to get together in the beginning, and I personally never really saw that. Not like I'm claiming that I saw this back then.
Right.
But now I'm starting, like you said, it makes sense why that never happened.
Right, because somewhere in the back of Lucien's mind, Pharaoh's always his mother.
Mommy, is that you? And it also makes sense why Lucien could never push back to Tamlin.
Yeah.
That's his dad. He went from one abusive male in charge to another.
Oh.
Which is why when he goes to the Night Court and then he goes off with Jurian and Vassa, that's for the first time he's broken away from people in charge of him.
Yeah.
Oh. And who does he hang out with all the time? Feyre's dad.
Oh.
His grandfather. Wow. If you guys agree or don't agree, tell us.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah,
for a mini episode.
I really want someone to go back and reread the first book, the first part, just to tell us if we're right.
Yeah. And now here's this week's featured review from Apple Podcasts.
This one comes from Canada, from Samantha, titled So Insightful. Thank you so much for your thoughtful commentary. I have just listened to 3 episodes and I'll probably binge the entire thing before the day is up. Oh no.
That's
Don't do
lot.
that. I love how many details you've noticed. The deer as the metaphor, Tamlin and Feyre's similarities. Honestly, you made me love SJM so much more and opened the door to looking into other books in a similar way.
Wow.
Thank you.
I think that's my favorite part is when people tell us that they're able to view other books in a different light that they were never able to before.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I really got my money's worth from my education.
Everyone else has gotten our money's worth, but I agree, because it's just like we paid too much money to have this pointed out. So it's like, there's no gatekeepers.
No.
Like academia loves to gatekeep.
And they should not.
Exactly. So please, like, take whatever you can. I will say, though, the analysis has made me like view other works more, which is difficult because I read a lot of smut.
So it's hard to just like turn your brain off.
I'm like, we're not here to analyze the questionable circumstances of what's happening, all right? I'm here to enjoy the smut.
I'm here for a good time.
Here for a good time, not a feminist time.
And if you would like to be featured on the podcast, please leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 13 through 15 of A Court of Wings and Ruin.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye! Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.